I think there's a lot of actually like cheaper research in terms of like a lot of supplements that could actually work. There's a lot of supplements that's like trash. And by the way, a lot of social media, YouTube there's a lot of pumping of supplements. Oh, here's my energy drink. Here's my vitality pill, right? There's so much merch hawking. And I think most of them, they either don't work or could be dangerous. I think some of them could work, but there's the cost to actually prove it is so high. And oftentimes, if the FDA doesn't regulate it, why should
well, that's the thing is, they're not regulated as drugs. They're not regulated as a food. Supplements are just, go ahead and buy them with no regulation. I've spoken to a German ER doctor about supplements, and she says her opinion on it is Americans have the most expensive urine in the world.
I agree. Look, vitamins. I think vitamins are important if you're like nutrient deficient. In a lot of developing countries, they need these vitamins fortification supplementation. But in the United States, the more people are deficient. The only things that are people really deficient, I think, vitamin B12 for vegans and vegetarians, and vitamin D.
Because you're getting that from salmon or meat, which they're not eating.
And I think vitamin D. And actually, I'm a big proponent of vitamin D. And there's a lot of good studies on vitamin D, and also folic acid. Folic acid is really key, not just for pregnant women or women who are about to be pregnant, but I think it's also really good against alcohol. There's actually studies where we actually have long-term cohort studies at Harvard, which, by the way, has all been canceled. I just can't emphasize that the Trump administration has canceled virtually like 95 or 99% of all medical research grants at Harvard as for retaliation. But from this same study, Nurses Health Study, and health professionals, these 30, 40 year studies, we actually know a lot about cancer, and it takes these kind of long-term studies to find out. But for example, folic acid, like alcohol causes every cancer under the sun, every cancer. Right. There's no exception. But if you have high folic acid, there's actually studies that it actually negates the effects of alcohol on cancer for, say, breast cancer adenoma and colorectal adenoma, these major cancer tumors. And it's not talked about. Like, you're not going to find it, but it's published. It's buried in the research that we published. It's not in the lay discussions or anything like that. But if we truly want to prevent cancer, we need to also, and given how everywhere alcohol is, we need to actually have way higher levels of folic acid, not just in women.
I think the thing, unfortunately, just with, and this is my opinion, maybe criticize this too, but my opinion is that our society has been taught that fat is bad and sugar is bad. And so what are the largest sources of folic acid? Okay, nuts. Oh, too high in fat. Meanwhile, they're like the healthiest thing under the sun. Citrus fruits, high in folic acid. Oh, too much sugar. I don't want to eat that. So what do Americans end up eating? It's 0-calorie soft drinks and high fructose corn syrup, or the manufactured foods that are designed around, this will lower your calorie count. I don't know. In my opinion, that's broken nutrition. Do you think RFK can help solve that? And am I wrong to take the POV?
Oh my God. Like, I think it's one of those things where every once in a while, RFK is right about, say, food dyes. I agree with that.
The red dye.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of other dyes that we need to remove. But he's wrong. It's like a broken clock's right twice a day kind of thing. There's tons of other things. His administration just rolled back regulations on 2 PFASs for these forever chemicals. And I'm like, did they just do that? Like, everyone knows PFAS is bad. They just rolled back. You should go watch that movie Dark Waters and look at the history of these these C8 and PFOAs and PFAS. It's really bad. I can't believe they just rolled that back. And also, by the way, as a nutrition scientist, I wear different hats. I'm an epidemiologist, but my other doctorate is in nutrition. This is why I talk about nutrition as well so much. Like, what the hell is going on with seed oil? Like, we should have a whole episode debunking nutritional claims. I know this is not, we started at prostate cancer. We're going, by the way, prostate cancer is the second most dietary cancer after colon cancer. some
but I mean,
cancers are
it's
not
all
very
related,
dietary.
right? Because it's all, here's sort of the media POV, and it all relates back to nutrition and health. So
Yeah, they do.
I mean,
And
like
you can
this
and you can
rollback from
predict a lot of
RFK.
things. Like obesity is a major cause. Obesity causes most cancers. The exception is premenopausal breast cancer. But breast cancer is a whole different beast. I could spend hours on this. But obesity, alcohol, it's not just smoking. Like people just think, oh, you get smoking from cancer. No, obesity, alcohol. But it's one of those things where like, you can't talk about too much because then you're going to fat shame. You can't tell people not to drink because then you're just a party pooper and a prohibitionist. I'm like, no, I think there should be moderation, but people need to recognize that it does add to cancer. And I think most people think it's some sort of like, oh, I got radiation poison or radon poison that gave me cancer. No, most things that give you cancer are these like small incremental things that you do every day in your life that adds up to these risks. It's almost like PFAS. It's like it accumulates in your body. It's a forever chemical. Accumulate. The levels in drinking water are very low, but they accumulate everywhere. And over time, pop. By the way, microwave popcorn really high in PFAS. Tons of other, sofas and couches have like these, the flame retardants. That's PFAS. Like we have all these kind of things. They accumulate over time, these dust and particles. And nutrition is the same way. Like you are what you eat, and you're not going to get a heart attack the next day from a burger or bacon. But over time, across your entire lifetime, you do this every single day, day in, day out, over your life. It's gonna give you potentially heart disease or cancer. And I think people should realize that most diseases, it's like filling a water jug. You don't get instantly. It's not like something like instantly breaks the jug and you get this big disease. It's you fill up the tank enough, and eventually, there's going to be a straw that breaks the camel's back, and that eventually, it's not the straw that really broke the back. It's the accumulation of all these things over your life.
Where were you going with the seed oils? Because I agree with what you're saying, this sort of the habit of longer term exposure to chemicals, and whether it's sodas or foods or whatever. Where were you going with the seed oils?
The seed oil thing is, they completely reversed it. So they're saying all these like vegetable oils are bad, No, actually, they're actually really healthy. We know from decades of research, and we don't mean decades of research on a couple hundred people or a couple thousand. We're talking about 250,000, 500,000, millions of people, if you add up all the studies around the world, that have been followed for decades. So we're talking about like hundreds of millions of person years, billions of person years of data that we know that trans fat is definitely bad, right? Trans fat is a different beast. Saturated fat is not good. Monounsaturated fat is better, and polyunsaturated fat, which is these vegetable oils, overall are way, way better. And I think, for example, we even have studies that eat mayonnaise actually lowers your risk of heart disease. It's not publicized,
right. But people get
it has a lot of really
debate.
good healthy oils and fats. And so for those who are saying like seed oil is bad, they're claiming, it causes inflammation, blah, 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 blah. Arachidonic acid could convert, but that pathway is like very, very narrow. And we've actually studied this. What they're talking about is like too much N6 oils. Omega-3 and N3s are good, and these N6 is bad. No, N6 is, these polyunsaturated fats are actually pretty good. And we actually looked at the N6, N3 ratio. This is stuff that we've taught this study for decades.
This is actually like
seed oils are not the cause. They actually.
I actually want to like double down on that for a moment for folks, because my understanding here is that ideally you should have a ratio of about 4 N6s, so omega-6s, to 1 omega-3. That's the ideal ratio. That's the ratio you find in the Mediterranean diet. It's associated with, longer life, lower heart disease, blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, you could throw in like the olive oil, like the omega-9, and it doesn't affect that ratio.
Olive oil is mostly monounsaturated, so it's not.
Oh, got it. My understanding is the American ratio is so screwed up. It's like 24 to 1 as opposed to 4 to 1.
But we don't have proof that 24 to 1 is bad. Like when we look at this ratio N6 N3, it's monotonically or it's neutral in terms of the ratio. Like because N3, by the way, N3 polyunsaturated versus N6 omega 6 omega 3 N3 6 N3, they're same thing.
Right.
There's not like the ratio does not increase the risk. You know, it's not like the ratio, there's a curve like, oh, a certain level, then it gets bad or something like that. No, it's monotonic means the same like direction. It doesn't actually increase the risk. Both of them are good. And the other thing people don't realize is substitution. Like, look, we have finite number of hours in the day. If we watch too much TV, we're doing something. We're not doing something else. If we run, we're displacing something else. If we're not sleeping, we're not doing something else. Where time is finite, but nutrition is finite too. Most 99% of us are not training for marathons, and we're not bulking up to gain weight. We're just trying to add an equilibrium. So whatever your daily calorie equilibrium, you eat until then. So anything you eat is displacing something else. And the issue in American diet is we eat too much like refined carbs, like white bread. Yeah. Even rice is a refined, white rice is a refined carb. Sure. And the issue is in nutrition, it's like if you tell people to eat more avocados, yes, but what are you displacing, right? If you're displacing other healthy things, then it's kind of neutral. But if you're displacing like bacon and sausages, avocados are definitely good for you. But also you can't overeat. You can't eat 3,000-4,000 calories of avocados. That's also going to cause metabolic problems, right? So it's think of diet like time. The issue is most of the time in American diet, like saturated fat. Saturated fat is bad, but it's bad versus what? It's bad versus the mono and the polyunsaturated fats. But it's kind of even against the white carbs. And most Americans don't eat whole grains. Let's be honest. By the way, the American fun fact, the number one whole grain in American diet is popcorn. If it weren't for popcorn, like a whole grain would be way lower. The movie industry is actually saving us from a whole grain on a whole grain. Yeah. But saturated fat is actually bad, but if you look at it as a comparison versus like white carb, it's kind of like they're equally bad. And so it looks like it's not as bad. Because most of the time, if you could tell people eat less saturated fat, oftentimes people will go to carbs, right? Or they go to bad proteins like bacon and sausages.
Right. And I think that's probably the association where, if you go have a burger and fries, you're going to have a massive exposure to N6s because of the oils in the fries. But let's be real, it's the frying that's unhealthy, right? I mean, that's my opinion.
No, but I think we should just I really want to debunk the seed oil N6 thing. There's no evidence. Like we have all these studies that higher N6 does not increase your risk of disease in terms of in all these large studies. You might find some laboratory stuffs, or some retrospective studies where we ask people who are already sick what they previously did. No, those are not reliable and they don't really count. It's the long-term studies. The long-term studies that really matter. And they're definitive. It's like you don't just see it in the US where, maybe the American diet is a little weird. You see this in Europe, you see this in Japan, you see this in Australia, you see this in studies around the world with very different diets. Polyunsaturated fat, N6s included, are good for you, and they're way better than other oils because this beef tallow obsession, beef tallow lard thing, they don't go as rancid, but for the most part, frying, you're not at a commercial fryer and you're frying the same oil for a month, right? I wouldn't fry vegetable oil for a month. Yeah, but you can fry it at home and use it and dump it out the next day. It's fine. And I think that's where all this beef tallow lard thing, there's high in saturated fats. Yeah, fine. They don't go rancid. You can fry them repeatedly over time, a little bit more than vegetable, but you can't fry them for a month. But they're saturated fats, and saturated fats are not objectively overall healthy because for the studies that show that they don't increase risk, if you actually look at those studies, it's saturated fat in place of carbs. Because whenever you study nutrition, whenever you study nutrition, you can't have ad lib unlimited. Like, say you have a 2,000 calorie diet, average calorie diet. It's not like we're saying you can, have an excess above 2,000, because that's not a natural diet. You're always substituting for something else. And the default substitution in nutritional studies, we actually have a name for it. It's called isocaloric substitution, if you want to read all about it. It's to substitute for the most common other thing, which is carbs. And most carb in America is processed white carb, not whole grains.
Bread. Yeah, exactly. Just full empty calories. You've stripped out the B vitamins from the germ and the bran. So what are you eating? Right. You should really focus on whole wheat.
It's high glycemic load. That's a whole nother issue. Basically, Americans
I want to hit Hey, quick reminder, if you want to earn a 5% yield plus all of the upside in my real estate startup, we are offering a non-accredited investor round where we will pay you a 5% yield plus you get all of the upside in the stock when your stock converts in the future. It gives you an opportunity to diversify away from rich stock market valuations, diversify away from most tariff risk, diversify away from the craziness of the treasuries market, especially with these Moody's downgrades. You diversify into fixer-upper real estate, which is what I believe I do best. This is my baby. I call it my little Berkshire Hathaway. Now, maybe I'm biased, but I've got over $5 million of my own money invested into this business, and I'm so excited for what I think we're going to be able to do with this business over not just the next years, but the next decades. So if you want to invest in my real estate startup, go to househack.com and know that I will do everything for this business in my power to make sure we can do the absolute best that we can. Make sure to read the solicitations and disclosures on the HouseHack website, because there is risk with every investment.